Hey everyone, welcome back to the Trauma Llama Club. Today we're going to be discussing a topic that hits close to home for a lot of us, navigating the workplace insurance process.
In this video, we're going to guide you through our experiences navigating the journey with PTSD and the process with WCB. And we're going to share with you tips that we wish we had known sooner. It would have saved us a little bit of stress, worry, and anxiety.
So let's get started. Your TLC adventure starts now.
Imagine walking through a beautiful but an unfamiliar field. This field kind of represents the WCB process. While it might be manageable, from a distance, it's riddled with landmines.
Guys,
What is it?
I think I just stepped on a landmine.
Basically, unexpected obstacles and challenges that can just blow up your progress at any moment.
Just like a landmine, the WCB process can be very unpredictable and overwhelming. Many first responders, like us, have to deal with complex paperwork, conflicting information, and the emotional toll of fighting for their rights. This can take an immense toll on people, and they can feel a lot of pressure, especially when the financial stability of themselves or their family are on the line.
I was never in this for the money. But it turns out that the money was an absolute necessity for me.
First, let's understand what PTSD is. PTSD is a mental health condition triggered by experiencing or witnessing traumatic events. So for first responders, that could be facing a life-threatening situation, accidents, violent encounters, or any type of accumulating traumas.
Right. So if you're experiencing symptoms like flashbacks, nightmares, severe anxiety, repetitive thoughts, and recall on past traumatic experiences, it's really important to seek help. If you're new to the Trauma Llama Club and this is the first time that you've joined us, we have done some previous videos on the symptoms of complex PTSD and PTSD and how to recognize them in yourself and others. And I'll link that video just up here. It should be noted that all of these tips are based on our own experiences that come from dealing with WCB Alberta. There might be some slight deviations between provinces. However, most WCB and WorkSafe coverage are all the same.
We are same, but different.
Tip number one, WCB provides presumptive coverage for psychological injuries sustained by first responders, emergency dispatchers, correctional officers in specific situations. So presumptive coverage means WCB will presume that a confirmed psychological or psychiatric injury arose out of and occurred in the course of employment unless there is evidence to the contrary. What does that actually mean? It means that a claim of PTSD by a first responder will be accepted as having been caused by their work with the onus to prove otherwise being on WCB.
Number two, understanding your compensation and coverage from WCB. So when you go off on a WCB claim for PTSD, WCB will cover a majority of your salary, and then your employer tops it up on top of that. So you're not getting your overtime, you're not getting your holiday pay, but you are still making your full base salary. They also give you 3 things to help manage stress. So one of them is a heart rate monitor, and that can be any device that will monitor your heart rate. So they will give you up to an amount, I believe when I did it, I don't know if it's increased or decreased by now, but when I did it about 2 years ago, it was $250 towards a device that would act as a heart rate monitor. For me, that was an Apple Watch. And they will back pay that if you bought the device after the date of your initial accident. So for me, I had actually purchased an Apple Watch shortly after going off for that reason, to monitor my stress, my sleep, my heart rate, all of that kind of stuff. And even though it was Before I was told by my WCB case manager that I could do it, it was after my date of accident. And so they were able to compensate me for that. Other things that they can cover will be any noise reduction gear. So headphones, noise canceling headphones. For me, it was the loop earplugs. They paid for that, as well as a weighted blanket. So if it's found that you require a service dog, either for return to work or for functioning with daily living skills, WCB will cover the cost of the service dog. So that includes if you go through a private company, owner training, even if you go through a nonprofit company, they will reimburse the nonprofit company for the cost of the dog, which is awesome because that funding then provides another dog for somebody else coming in. But that caveat is that it has to be for return to work purposes or for functioning at your daily living skills. So in my case with Palmer, I knew that that program was going to benefit me. So I went ahead with my psychologist, applied for the program, and initially WCB said they wouldn't cover the cost. Because at that point I was still in my TPI program. I didn't have any permanent restrictions or anything like that. And so they said they weren't convinced that I required him to return to work. By the time I finished my TPI program, I had permanent restrictions in place. The recommendations were that I required him to return to work. And so at that point, they covered me for him and reimbursed the organization. So the coverage that they offer you is $2,000 a year, which goes to his food, his vet bills, basically everything he needs. They do cover the cost of your initial setup. So if you need a bed and some toys and some whatever, they cover that too as an additional cost. And then they cover pet insurance. You have to go through them for approval of the policy and amount. But once they sign off on it, they will provide you with that and reimburse you for that as well. So that is covered for the life of your service dog.
Tip number 3, access the benefits and resources that are provided by WCB. This can include wage loss benefits, coverage for medical treatments, and support for rehabilitation and recovery. So WCB will provide you with coverage sessions with your community therapists to process your traumas. If you're still not ready to return to work, you'll be moved into a TPI program. I know you've said it already, but for those who don't know, TPI is a traumatic psychological injury program. And you may do this more than once as well. This is a program that does intensive work with multiple therapy sessions, PTSD courses, and exposure therapy with an occupational therapist. Exposure therapy, if you don't know, is working up to the exposures with places, things, sounds, anything that can cause an activation.
Wait, so if we tell you our fears, you bring it out?
Exactly. That's why it's called exposure therapy. So, Todd, why don't you go next?
Hi, I'm Todd. I'm not afraid of snakes.
Oh.
But I have recently developed like a huge fear of a pizza.
What they're trying to do is trying to decrease your activations by doing this repeated times.
Like desensitize you to it.
Pizza delivery? Oh yeah, over here. Yeah. Thank you very much.
So what happens if you're unable to return to your position in emergency services? When you go through your TPI program, you work with the therapists and you do a lot of trauma processing of the different occurrences, different situations, and what your triggers are. And so at the end of that program, they identify the triggers that if you're exposed to them through work, they're going to negatively impact your mental health and make you worse. And so they will write either permanent or temporary restrictions, which are basically rules that WCB and your employer need to follow in order to keep you safe. So some people worry that if they can't return to their position with their original organization or in the field of being a first responder that they won't have coverage from WCB, but that's not the case. So as long as you are cooperating with the WCB process, you will have WCB coverage. Your injury is a result of a work-related injury, and so you are covered by your insurance.
I'm cooperating here, and there's no.
Sir, you have no call to get snippy with me. I'm just doing my job here.
I'm not. I'm not arguing here. I'm cooperating.
So if you reach this point, it can be an extremely stressful, overwhelming, and scary time, because not only are you potentially dealing with the loss of your role, which can then lead to, for a lot of us, a loss of a large part of your identity.
Yeah.
You're dealing with all of that. You don't need to be dealing with a fear of loss of income on top of that. So if you hit this stage, there are a few things that you should know.
So what is duty to accommodate? So your employer has a duty to accommodate for up to 2 years. What this means is that your employer is required to make changes to accommodate an employee's ability to work. Examples of accommodations would be things like modifying the employee's hours of work, could be changing their job duties, could be making the area that they have to work in more accessible, or reinstatement of the employee who actually are fit to work. The employer is required to provide accommodations unless they can prove that those accommodations would cause them undue hardship. So what is undue hardship? It's when meeting those accommodations in the real world would cause the employer to spend an unreasonable amount of money, or meeting those accommodations would seriously interfere with their business.
Right. So while your employer is attempting to accommodate your restrictions and create a position that is going to be safer for you, you continue to get your full salary, your full health benefits. They have 2 years to do that. And it stops and starts depending on when you try different positions. So like in my position, I attempted to go back to work in emergency services. At that point, my duty to accommodate paused. I did a couple small shifts.
Couple?
Everything imploded.
Come on, get it together. Or this will all have been for nothing. Anxiety, you're putting too much pressure on her. Anxiety, you need to let her go.
And then I was put on basically the ability to stabilize everything with my therapist. And so I was marked by my therapist as then not fit to work while we kind of calmed everything down, let everything regulate again. And then after we reached that point, my duty to accommodate started again once it was determined that I could try to go back to work again. So there's kind of a stop and start process to it. So the 2 years is inclusive of the time where you're actively able to go in and try a position. Within 2 years, if they can't find a position that's going to work for you, then you transition to the civilian side of your organization. So whether you work for a municipal organization, provincial, federal, whatever it is, they will try to find you something on the civilian side of things that is safe for you to do. Now, just because it's not police related, depending on what your traumas are, you may or may not be able to do that. So it's not an instantaneous thing where you can't work on the emergency services side of things, so you're automatically just moved over. You actually remain connected to your organization until you are able to find a position that is safe for you, that you are able to do on the civilian side, and have had a trial period of a few months to ensure that this is something that everyone agrees is going to work. You, your therapist, the employer, and then you would start that position. If neither of those things work, then you would move on to the next stage, which is going to be retraining.
Good morning, everybody.
Can I get you a cup of coffee, sir?
Oh, no. I'm an intern, just like you guys. except for the tie, the briefcase, and the fact that I can rent a car.
Let me ask a question. So you're in a unique situation. Well, not unique, but your situation is you work for a department that is employed by the city. WCB covers all employers. So what if you were in a private situation? Say you were a private ambulance company. You don't work for the city. They're contracted. So your WCB 2 years to accommodate would only be through that one
venue.
Yeah.
The other thing with that, with private companies, it really does depend on the company you work for, because we do have friends who are in that situation who went off on WCB working for a private company, and their organization doesn't pay to top them up. So they only received a percentage of their wages while they were off with WCB as well. So when you get into private companies, it can vary for sure. But usually if you're working within a federal, provincial, municipal, large entity organization like that, it's going to follow this similar path.
But still same.
If you get to the point where you can't return to your emergency services, civilian employment isn't working for you, the next stage to look at would be retraining. So that could look like a college program, university degree. If you have your university degree and you need master's, or you can even do your degree over again if it's out of date. All of those things are possibilities. They will pay for your tuition as well. While you are going to school, you will also receive your full salary. Now, once you've graduated into that program, we've actually talked to a few different people and we've heard conflicting stories from different people. So it seems like at the end of that is where they'll kind of come to you with a contract and you come to an agreement between yourself and WCB.
We are prepared to reject that offer.
Michael, you haven't even heard.
Never accept their first offer.
We've heard from some people that regardless of retraining, that they are paid their pre-injury salary up into a cap of $104,000 until they reach the age of 65. We've also heard from people that once they retrained and they were deemed employable within the degree or chosen field that they had gone to school for, that they were then considered employable by WCB standards. And so their files were closed and they were on their own in forging their way forward. So all of that to say, it seems like at that point, it's not specifically defined which route it goes to. So when WCB comes to you with a contract, make sure that you read the fine print, that you're aware of what the agreement is, and you feel confident moving forward before you sign anything.
I'm sure you're scared, probably in debt. That's the best offer you're going to get. I'll see your situation and I'll raise you a situation.
The next step from that is being deemed not fit for work. So that would be unable to return to work in any capacity.
Yeah.
You'll receive 9% of your pre-injury salary. So your salary at the time of your injury until you're 65 years old. UCB, in my opinion, probably uses this as a very last resort.
Yeah.
They don't want to pay you for the next 5, 10, 20 years and not get anything out of you. So this is their case of last resort, would be deeming you not fit for work.
Tip number 5, connect with your union. So as you work through the WCB process, if you start to feel like you're being treated unfairly by WCB or by your employer, your union can still represent you. So they can inform you of your rights, make sure your rights are being met. They can negotiate on your behalf with either party. And so they are a very important support that are still available to you. So don't forget that they're there. When it comes to navigating this process, the only safe way through it is to piece together the information passed down to us from the people who've gone before us. The ones that have already gone through have kind of identified a safe path for us, whether that's through unfortunately stepping on a landmine or navigating it successfully.
You need to listen to me real close, all right? You boys are in a minefield. One false move, it's hasta la bye-bye. It's God's own miracle you made it to where you are without trotting on one. Gonna be fine. Just stay where you are. I laid every last one of them myself. You have a map? Map's right here. Got it all up in my...
Jump into the orange ring.
Captain Strand! Okay.
The problem is, individually, we might have an idea of specific areas of the process because those are the areas that we've had experience with. But by coming together and sharing our knowledge, we can gain a greater understanding of the whole picture and help each other to get through it safely.
So whether it's through this channel or on your own, building a community of fellow first responders is crucial, whether it's in person or online. Together we can share our experiences, offer advice, and provide support. By doing this, we create a map of that minefield, identifying where those obstacles are, and hopefully we are able to avoid those.
Whether you're just starting out in the WCB process or you've already made your way through it, join our community, share your experiences, your tips, and your support. Together we can make this journey a little less daunting for everyone. Remember that you're not alone. Reach out for support when you need it. Take the necessary steps to manage your stress, and know that your well-being is just as important as the lives that you impact every day. So if you are navigating this process and have any insights, no matter how insignificant they might seem, please share them in the comments below. Together we can make a difference for those going through it and everyone coming after us.
Thank you for watching. I'm Chris.
I'm Rebecca.
And most importantly, if you found this helpful, please share it within your circles with your fellow first responders. Let's try and build a community that stands strong together.
Take care of yourselves and remember to enjoy the TLC you deserve. And if you're looking for more information on PTSD or CPTSD for first responders, check out this video right here.